I suppose you've heard at some point about psychics who work with the police, who look for missing people, or sometimes there are crimes with many loose ends, and when the police feel overwhelmed, they may have to turn to a psychic who has the ability to obtain some kind of information, something that can shed light on these complex cases. That's the topic we're going to discuss today, and we'll be talking about it with Ximena Díaz. She is precisely dedicated to this too, searching for missing people through her psychic abilities.
Thank you very much, Esteban, for the invitation, and let's just let the conversation flow.
That sounds perfect to me. Hey, Ximena, I understand that you're a medium, right? But you also have another side that perhaps isn't directly related to what we would call mediumship, but rather is connected to what I might describe as psychic abilities. Because in addition to acting as a medium, right, and fulfilling that role, you've also dedicated yourself to and worked on issues related to searching for missing people. That's usually more associated with psychic abilities. I did a bit of research and realized that there isn't a term, or at least I couldn't find a specific term for that area. The only thing I know is that in the United States, they sometimes call them psychic detectives, this type of psychic. Tell us a little about how you got into this. Tell us a bit about that, about your story in this field.
All right. Well, I've always had this thing about channeling with people who have already passed away, ever since I was very young. And one thing just led to another. Because people start recommending you to others. When there are people who say, my child disappeared, I don't know, like a case from 2 years ago, and they ask you for help to find out if they're alive or dead, it's part of the grieving process. You start to help out there. And along the way you realize that they also connect. In most of the cases, I've found that the people are deceased. So I think that's where this psychic ability you mentioned gets associated with mediumship, So you kind of start expanding on this whole being a medium thing, You start using this tool in other areas as well.
Okay, perfect. But basically, I understand that you started out mainly with mediumship, and since people began approaching you and asking you because they had relatives who were lost or missing, they wanted to see if you could help them, and you started little by little and realized it was a field where you could contribute. That's how it was, right?
Yes.
Hey, and
of course, at first it was quite shocking because we started working on some cases with a girl from Paraguay, from a foundation over there, for missing children. And I don't know. You start off like, hey, look, they put out the notice, I need help. This girl is missing. It was the case of a minor. So I said to her, okay, send me a photo. Normally, as I mentioned to you before, I used to work with photos to have something to connect with, although sometimes it's not necessary. I'm very clear about that. And that's when I start working on that part. So I send the person what I hear or what I see. I make drawing like to specify places, because since they're from other countries, I have no way of knowing what the physical location nearby is like, or the house or whatever, the place where this person disappeared. So then the feedback, the response back is like, yes, actually, look, this is how it is. And they send me photos back of the places I've drawn or that I've specified, you see. And over time, the result is that it was clear and real what I had described,
Perfect. Hey, and how long ago did this start?
The searching or the mediumship?
No, the searching part.
The searching started, I would say, about 6 years ago when I moved here to the countryside. It seems that being more relaxed here helps you connect more than living in the city. Because I used to live in Santiago, so everything is faster. You have less time to calm your mind. So, here it started happening by chance. A case would come in, then they'd connect you with another one, That foundation would send me the more cases. They would reach out to me every time they had a case of a missing child from the foundation in Paraguay. And the word kind of spreads because I don't have a website, no, but the same people who have already had experiences with me start recommending you. So that's when they contact me, and I'm always willing to help.
Hey, do you specifically remember your first case?
The first one was Juliet, a girl from Paraguay, a minor. There was a really important legal issue there later on. After she disappeared, and she had, when I started that case, I told the girl, if you want, I can help you. I'm a medium. What do you need? She says to me, send me the photo and the name. She sends it to me. And I saw several things and made several drawings, I drew a little shack with a window, just one window, no door, just a frame, nothing else. And I told her, you know what? I have the feeling that, because sometimes I feel things, so if someone is drunk, I can feel it, like it's in the head, and I felt a sensation that I explained to her. I feel as if there were water in the head. I don't know why. And she tells me that the girl had hydrocephalus. I had a problem, see? And that little house I drew was like a goat pen, which was the girl's little pet. You see? So that's when you say, wow. And she sends me photos of the place. So you think you're on the right track and you keep looking for more background information. There were also images that I couldn't interpret because there was a very sensitive issue, like abuse and all that. So I saw it, but since that's not something that's in your mind, I didn't interpret it that go away. I did mention it, but I didn't interpret it that way. So you also have to broaden your mind because there's all kinds of things in the world, as they say. That was one case, and it's still open because the body was never found. I marked the location, but then the police didn't allow any more investigation. It went to trial. Anyway, several years have passed.
Hey, Ximena, it's interesting to know how you perceive things when you have to connect psychically and you're searching for a missing person. How does the information come to you?
Look, for example, I was telling you that sometimes I work with a photo, with the name. It's like a reference point to have a connection. And then thoughts or images come to me, like these flashbacks. So now I know how to separate them from my own thoughts. It's like an innate, natural condition now.
Which is not easy, right? It's not easy. For those who don't know, it's not easy because it's very, very easy for your mind to start making up stories.
Yes. So now I can do it easily, and I know which thought is mine and which isn't, or which one just came to me, because they're quick. I mean, an image lasts, I don't know, like a second. So you also have to sharpen your ability to notice as many details as possible, especially in these search cases.
Perfect, look. And what you're saying is very consistent, for example, with what Cote Olavaria told us in the last interview we had. She said because she draws spirits, that she had to capture as much information as possible because the image lasted just a second and she had to hold on to, retain that information. The same thing happens to you?
Yes. And of course, since these are search cases, you have to have evidence that it really is the person the client is asking about, that it's their relative, that there's some feature, some characteristic, a special word, a nickname, any piece of information that you give to the client. And they can say, yes, that's really my brother, my relative, my family member, or whatever.
That is, let's try to explain more or less how the process works. For example, someone contacts you and sends you a photo of the missing person to see if you can.
Yes.
They ask if you can help, and you start looking at the photo. Do you relax beforehand? How do you do it? And then you look at the photo and start to go into the photo.
I have a really simple technique. When they give me the name, I say the name about 3 times. If they have 2 first names, I say both, and both last names too, if possible. It's like to get a feel for it. And then suddenly I start writing things down.
Right.
So, and I number them. Why do I number them? because sometimes it's over WhatsApp or whatever. We're talking on WhatsApp or Messenger, So it's easier for me later when they reply. Oh, number 1 was the aunt, I don't know who. Number 3, you see, it's to keep myself organized in my head and not just have a back and forth conversation, because sometimes on WhatsApp or social media you end up talking out of sync. So that makes it easier for me. And that's how I start putting things together. I say everything that comes to me.
Okay, perfect.
One time, I'll tell you an anecdote. One time I felt awkward telling a girl because what came to me was glass eyes.
Glass eyes.
He would say to me, oh, it was a gentleman. So he would call me glass eye. And I thought, what the heck does glass eye mean? Should I tell her or not? And it didn't make any sense in the context of her family, her daughters and all that. And I said, look, I'm going to tell you something. I don't know if it makes sense to you or not, glass eye. And he laughs. I tell her. Then the girl says to me, it doesn't make sense to me. Well, I told her, anything that doesn't make sense to you, talk it over with your family because maybe someone knows. And the brother of the gentleman who had passed away said that when they were kids, they had a shop. And the owner was a blind man who had a little glass eye. Like that many years ago. And one time they went to buy something and his little glass eye fell out. And instead of being scared, they laughed. But the daughter had no idea about the story. She had to confirm it with her uncle. You see?
That happens sometimes.
Yes. So, in the end, assertiveness is like 99%, if not 100,
Ximena, is there any difference? Do you notice any difference when you do this kind of work where you're connecting psychically because you're looking for a person? And when, for example, someone contacts you because they want to connect with a deceased relative who is already known to have passed away? Is there any difference or is it very similar?
Look, it's almost the same. In fact, in 2 of the cases, out of many that I've seen, they were both young people. And it was their mothers who wanted information. It's like they didn't tell me directly. I was looking for signs to see if they were alive or not. Because one had been missing for a long time and the other for about a month. So I was looking for signs to know if they were already gone or if they were still around, you see. And they wouldn't tell me, they just wouldn't say it. Like I would ask them and they wouldn't tell me. And there's a case that lasted 2 years. He told me one day when I suddenly remembered him, he left me the message and I gave it to his mother. Before your birthday, we will see each other. And about 2 days before the mother's birthday, they found that boy's body.
Wow, that's intense.
Yes. It was an Argentine woman who lives in Canada. And her son went through that situation over there in Canada.
Ximena, and what happens in cases where the person or they're looking for someone and that person isn't deceased? How do you notice the difference between when someone has passed away and when they haven't?
That also happens to me. These girls from Paraguay, if I'm not mistaken. There was a young man who disappeared. It was a family issue, a problem, and he went missing. And since the boy was kind of depressed, they feared the worst. So they also sent me his photo. I connected with him. But I told them to look for him on a street that was, I don't know, dusty. That was kind of on an incline, but there was a friend of his there. And the boy was indeed there with his friend because since he had a family problem, he had gone to seek comfort with his friends. It's like I connect with souls. They tell me whether they are still on this earth or not. In the case of the 2 boys I was telling you about, even though their mother insisted and I tried to connect with them, they told me they were no longer here when they wanted to, or when they felt it was appropriate. I think it's something like that.
Of course, I understand. It's as if, on the other side, they have some kind of priority or they know exactly when the mother is ready for it and when she's not, so to speak.
Yes, that's how I felt.
When a person, for example, is not deceased, like in the case you just told us about, do you feel in that situation as if the information comes to you from a third party or from the person themselves? Do you feel that this information comes to you from someone, or do you feel like you enter some kind of field of information where you couldn't really define where it comes from, but it's as if you just know things?
Of course. Look, I always talk about my angel because sometimes it's as if someone is whispering the information in your ear, and sometimes it's as if it's given to you by the person who passed away and whom the family wants to contact, you know? So it's like I've never been completely sure. Like, many times I'm very certain that it's the soul of the person who passed away, and other times, honestly, there's some doubt. And I always talk about my angel as a way to refer to this magic and to what this key mediumship is all about.
Right? So basically it could be like a guide or something like that.
Yes.
Now, okay, because there are other people who experience it like I do, that many times I don't feel in these kinds of things, you know, I don't feel like someone is transmitting it to me, but rather it's a deep certainty that I have. It's like I just know it, but I don't know why I know it. But it's not like I hear someone talking to me and telling me, hey, it's here or it's there either. It's more like I just know it, and sometimes I suddenly see an image.
Hits your brain, yeah.
An image of a place, and then I kind of quickly piece together the story. That's what happens to me. I don't do this for a living, but it has happened to me. You know, very few people I know who are mediums get into that field, because it's kind of, I think it's a bit delicate, because just imagine if you made a mistake, what do you think about that? How do you feel about that? Imagine you feel that the person has passed away and you tell the mother, hey, you know what? I sense that they're gone. And of course, that could be extremely compromising, a huge emotional collapse for the mother. And then imagine it turns out you were wrong and the person isn't missing.
For example, in that case, I'm very careful and very respectful of the situation. I mean, I'm also a mother, so I understand all those vulnerabilities, like, for example, losing a child. So until I keep that information to myself. If I think, oh, it seems like they're not here, it seems like they've already died, I keep that to myself until I have a lot of evidence that that's really the case. I saw a case here in Santa Cruz. Well, I mentioned it to you a little earlier about a boy who disappeared. And I went to the place and was with his devastated mother. So in the end, I started contacting her husband because he was stronger. And sometimes the information isn't very pleasant, you know? So I also try to be very careful with that. And I don't share the information until I'm 100% sure, you see? Or whatever they tell me. But in the case of these two that I'm telling you about, the two sons, it was like they let me know when it was the right moment to. They never gave me any indication that no matter how much I asked, if they were here, if they were somewhere else, if they had passed away, no, they wouldn't tell me until they felt it was the right time.
I understand you. And does this kind of information come to you spontaneously? Or do you usually work alone? Or do you only enter that field when someone contacts you because someone has passed away? I'm telling you this because I only know one person, a friend, who also does this kind of work. He does it very anonymously because, well, he does other things for a living and actually works with the police. And he would tell me that sometimes he would be watching, for example, a news story about a missing person and would automatically start receiving information about what happened to that person or what was going on with them without anyone asking him to. And in fact, what's more, a few years ago, this was years ago, there was a boy who had disappeared in Africa, in a place in Africa, and he didn't show a map, and he didn't give an account of what had happened. And weeks later, articles about it started to appear in the press. The news began to develop with what was known up to that point. And the map also matched the journey he had taken. And not only that, the official version didn't have much to do with the version he had given. But yes, in our opinion, since we knew a bit about the case from the inside, from what he was sharing with us, it was consistent. Let's say the final outcome, there was one version, but he fit perfectly. and it was a version that was more hidden, let's say more complex.
Yes. I've also had similar experiences with another friend. For example, the case of Lohan, a 4-year-old boy who disappeared. He told me, this okay. Boy is from Argentina. A lady contacted me after seeing me on the page. She saw, I don't know, comments. Some Medium pages that exist, which I sometimes look at. And if a case clicks with me, I take it on. Let's say I offer myself. And she spoke to me to ask me about that case. So at that point, I already gave her a lot of information, and she tried to get in touch with the police over there. In the end, she couldn't manage it. But later, as the weeks went by in that case, everything I had said could be verified with what was officially coming out from the police over there.
Hey, Ximena, and what is the most emblematic case? The case that has impacted you the most, that has caught your attention the most, that you could share with us here, if possible?
Look, there's one about a minor in Paraguay whose remains still haven't been found, because it was a very difficult case, but the one that affected me the most because we had a result. The other one, I'm still waiting for the result of that case of the little girl, but the one about a boy, Kevin, from Canada, we worked on that case for 2 years, and we went through the entire family. I mean, I channeled with the grandparents, with the grandmother, with all his deceased relatives, and they didn't give us not a single sign. He would send messages to his mom, you see, specific things. I don't know, like some yellow caterpillar boots. So I'd look for the photo and send it to the mom. Hey, look, I got this. I don't know what it means. And she'd say, oh yes, those are the same boots he used to wear, her son, you see? And they found him in a place that I had also drawn, in bad circumstances, obviously, in the house where he was renting. With his friend, in quotes, who was the one that killed him. So these are tough cases, and you have to be extremely careful with what you say, not to give false hope either, but you do have to be very honest with all the information you provide.
Right, of course. And have you ever been contacted by the police to work on these kinds of cases? Or has that not happened to you yet?
No, but I would love to collaborate. It's an area I really like, and it's something that has come about naturally with all these cases that, I've been telling you about. You see?
The friend I have, has been working with the police for a while. I don't know if he still does, but he told them that if they wanted him to work with them, they had to come to his house because he does it. For those jobs, he does it in person, as far as I know, and he doesn't charge them anything. But he said that if word got out about him, the help he was giving, the police would be over. So, he's kept his distance. And they've been respectful. They have to travel outside of Santiago in order to... And he lives kind of out in the country. So it's not that easy for the police, let's say, to get to his house. But they do go. The interesting thing...
It's interesting.
The interesting thing about this is that the police, of course, won't say it openly. But behind the scenes, when cases have absolutely nothing left to go on, they eventually turn to people like you who have a disability, right?
Yes, in one of the cases I was telling you about. I'm not going to say which one. In one of the cases, the police, when I went to the place, were there, and they were also very respectful, and also took into account what I was sending to a father. So they also cross-checked the information, you see? Because it was also like, we can't find anything anymore. But let's see if it's here. Where they say, the information was cross-checked in one of the cases, but I didn't work directly with the police, only indirectly.
Hey, but something just came to mind. There have also been some cases here in Chile that got public attention, and I remember a case, the Cessna thing, and the one with Felipe Camille and Vargas, where there was a psychic or a female psychic who gave information that had nothing to do with it, saying he was in a cave or something like that. What do you think about that? Because that's a really big mistake, to make it public and put yourself out there for it.
Right? Yes, I think so. Well, thank God, I've never had a failed case like that. When I do a channeling session, if there are 5 things out of 100 that don't make sense, because I leave it up to those who have passed on, if they tell me 20 things, like I said, I list them, I say all 20, and that's it. If they tell me 100, I take the time and give all 100. You see what I mean? I do the session until they stop telling me things. So, when someone looks for this kind of other action, like searching for people or whatever, you have to be very careful. I've had good results in all of them. You see, the cases have been very accurate. When the report comes out later or when the story ends, yes, I don't know if I should call it a prediction, but the information I provide has been very accurate, you see? But I am very, very, very careful and respect for people who are suffering, who are in pain. You can't just come and say anything.
Of course, absolutely. Well, there are people who will take advantage of the circumstances, and there's nothing you can do about that. There will always be people like that. Is there a clear difference when you perceive either someone who has passed away and someone who is still alive? I mean, do you sense it right away? Is it something that's very obvious to you? No? Or as the case develops, do you come to understand whether the person has passed away or not? How does that work?
Look, in the end, I feel like it's very similar. I mean, the difference must be minimal. You see? Because, for example, in the case of the 2 guys we've been talking about this afternoon, they always kept the information to themselves that they were no longer here. So I would say they don't tell me. I ask and they don't tell me, And in the end, they managed the information in such a way that they gave it to me when they wanted to. And when it was with some missing kids who were alive, I didn't notice any difference compared to the other case. It's so similar when someone dies or is sick. During the COVID period, it happened to me a lot. I feel it. So if it was a heart attack, I feel the pressure in the stomach, whatever part it is, or the brain, you see? I feel a different sensation that over time you also learn to separate from your own pains or physical sensations, And I can determine it. I mean, the stomach on the left side, the stomach on the right side, the upper part of the torso, breathing, can't breathe. I don't know. And they're very precise things, you see? Very.
Of course. Yes, I understand you perfectly. You often feel it in your body, and over time you can even more or less define what kind of ailment it is.
Exactly, yes.
I mean, that happens to me too. Hey, so as you were saying, when someone is missing but hasn't passed away, or someone else has died, in the end, you say there's not much difference. So, do you notice it? Because they basically tell you?
Because that's when they tell me. Because I try, for example, when it's a missing person, I try to get to their moment, like to have them summarize the story for me.
Right?
So if I sense that they might be deceased, I try to go to that moment to have them take me to that moment. The last one, you see? And that's how I start figuring it out.
And normally, when you have these cases, do you see it from the outside, like you're a camera watching? Or do you see it from the person's point of view?
Yes, like so. Look, only once have I felt like I was seeing it from the inside.
Right?
And that experience really stuck with me because it was a lady that
To see what the person saw.
Yes, she died of COVID, alone in a hospital. So her daughter wanted to know how it had been. if she had suffered. So, yeah, I gave her a lot of details before and after. I don't know if it happens to you too, but it was like Carlos Pinto's tunnel, I swear. And she was walking through the tunnel, and I never managed to figure out if I was inside her or next to her. And we saw the light, and it was an extraordinary feeling. And about halfway through, she looked at me, and I felt like she said to me, "Go back." And I went back. And that experience really left a mark on me, because I thought, wow, just look how far I went, accompanying her. You see what I mean?
Of course.
It's intense. You start questioning a lot of things.
Absolutely. Look, honestly, no, nothing like that has ever happened to me. But interesting, really interesting experience. I've never seen a tunnel in a mediumistic experience. But I have had experiences where I see as if I were the person. Even when they have vision problems, I see poorly. You see what I mean? When I can't see out of one eye, I only see through one. Things like that have happened to me, actually.
Yes, I've also experienced that with the case of that girl where I felt like there was water in her brain. And of course, she had a health issue, hydrocephalus. So that's when I understood that was the sensation when someone is drunk. I don't drink, so it was also like that feeling of drunkenness, you know? Other things also give you that kind of sensation. So I can also figure it out.
Right, yes. It also happens to me in sessions that suddenly you can feel that at a certain moment the person was like on drugs.
Yes, that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, when they contact you about a missing person, have they been cases where the disappearance is recent, or have you also had cases where people were lost many years ago? Have you also had those cases of people who have been missing for many years?
Look, there was the mother of a friend. The lady must be, I don't know, maybe 55 years old now. And one of her brothers left when she was very young, and she wanted to know the story there. And of course, the man had left, I think, to Argentina. They said that was supposed to be his destination when he left. And we looked for him, and many years had passed, and we did an amazing session. I mean, with real evidence. For example, I remember the man telling me, I have a really good memory for all my cases. I can be super forgetful, and sometimes I go to the kitchen and say, why did I come here? But with the cases, I mean, I remember everything in great detail. So the man says in the photo, there's a wedding photo, and there I am, I don't know, to the right of the bride. And they sent me photos from the wedding, from all the weddings, and they hadn't noticed. And while looking, we realized that there was a picture of him to the right of the bride, and he was there, present.
How interesting, right?
See what I mean?
Hey, is there any difference between a case, for example, of a missing adult and one of a missing child? When you experience the case of a child, which is a really intense case, right? It tends to affect you more, doesn't it? And do you connect with the child? No? Or do you feel like it's your guide or your angel who's telling you, sending you the information? How do you feel it? Do you feel it as a child, or do you feel it as someone older?
No, more like an adult. It's like look, there's the case of Tomasito. I looked into it here at home. I didn't do it for anyone, because I have a nephew named Tomas who was the same age. So my sister was very affected by the similarity in age, the name, and the situation itself, which was terrible. So I looked into that case just for myself, you know, and I saw this boy, but I saw him from behind.
Right, as if you were a camera.
As if I were a ghost and I was behind, watching. You see? That case. Other cases I see, like I told you, it's like seeing them almost from the inside, where you can't really tell if it's from inside or just right next to him. You don't know if you're inside or beside. You see? And others I see as if I were a camera from above. I see the situations.
Ah, perfect.
When they show me situations.
And when you are handling one of these cases, do you feel the emotion that the person is experiencing at that moment? Or are you more like a neutral observer, like someone watching a movie but not involved in the emotion that's happening in the situation?
Yes, I feel the emotion.
Do you feel it as if it were your own?
Yes, yes. Just like I say, oh, I feel like I'm excited. Sometimes I cry because it just overwhelms you. Yes, yeah, you feel it.
Do you think there is any frequent pattern in your experience of why people disappear? Is there any pattern that you've noticed? Because people contact you who are obviously looking for a loved one who has disappeared, who they don't know if they're alive or not, and they hope that they're still alive. But is there any pattern that you think is common for these situations to happen?
Do you mean for them to disappear or for the family to look for them?
Both.
Okay, look, I think that people, if we come to this earth, we come to fulfill a role, a mission, a purpose. And part of our purpose is to have good or bad experiences. Obviously, no one wants the bad ones, but that's how it works. And all the experiences we have, good or bad, affect others, our loved ones, our circle, you see. Now, the same thing happens with the family. I mean, losing a child, losing a father, losing a husband, losing someone close. It's extremely difficult, but always, you learn something. And beyond that, I think understanding that death it's going to another place. It's going to another place, and they can always be connected. They're always sending little messages, but sometimes the speed of life, modernity, the noise kind of keeps us from stopping to notice, you see.
Of course, because our minds are so busy with practical things day to day and practical matters that in the end they consume all the attention you could give to those spaces that are so important ultimately.
I orient myself a lot by the sun. So you can tell the difference between morning sun and afternoon sun. If it's in Chile, the afternoon sun, if I'm facing north to south, it's on my right, you see? That's a reference point I use a lot, the sun. Just like if it's sunset. And that's how I locate myself on the map when it comes to searching for people. Because if I tell you about a bridge, the bridge could be running north to south, east to west, or the other way around. I don't know, you see? So that's when I pay attention to those kinds of details in nature. The sun, the course of the river, and then I start placing them on the map.
And I also imagine that depending on the type of vegetation, whether it's more from the north, or if we're talking about something related to the south of Chile. Well, for those who don't know, the north tends to be much more arid, and the south is very green, full of lakes and forests.
And that also gives me a kind of time frame, you see? In other cases, the connected ones are very precise. Once a case of a channeling. He was a young man. He talked to me about the dress, the christening dress, I had to look up the style of the christening dress, Google it. I had to look up the flowers on the dress because it had a very particular floral pattern. So I sent it to the person the sister who had consulted me, and I said, "Look, this is the dress. Who wore a dress like this with this style and these flowers?" And my daughter says to me, "When we baptized her." And I told her before that, I said, "Yeah, because he was there. He was part of that celebration." So my daughter says to me, when we baptized her, and it was the same dress, and she sent me the photo. And they were the same flowers that I had on. I swear to you, I searched a lot to deliver it because he insisted a lot that I be precise with that.
All right, perfect.
So you can't just do it quickly like that.
And that, the story you're telling me, is it about the case? Is it the case of a missing person?
No, it's a case of a channeling. What I'm getting at is that they're so precise, and sometimes they really push you. So the dress, the flowers. And it's the same in the cases of missing persons, you see? It's like they insist on giving you information. So they guide you.
Because I could deduce two things. Look, if someone says, for example, someone who is missing, right? And I give you information about something He didn't experience Gea, but he tells you, I was there. So you understand that he's deceased because the family says he had already disappeared and wasn't there. You see? And the other way around, if he tells you, I was there, and they say yes, he was indeed present, then it means that you're connecting with him or with his consciousness, and he's telling you about something he experienced, but in that case, it wouldn't be so clear whether he's deceased or not. Because what do you think about that? Because it kind of bothers me a little. Can you connect with the consciousness of someone who is alive?
Yes.
Yes.
I say yes.
Okay. And what would that be? Like their higher self? Like their spirit?
I think something like that, because it's like, I say it's like when you go to have your tarot read and they give you the info, you know? But it's like, sometimes people send me photos and say, look, this person is sick. And I'm like, don't tell me anything. I say what comes to me first. I don't like being given information, just the photo and the name. Because otherwise what I deliver gets distorted. You see? Because we know that in this world there are people who aren't so transparent or so nice. You know what I mean? So I try to have them give me only that. At most, the date of birth, if they want, if they forgot and sent it to me, that's fine, so that the information is pure and natural from the connection.
Okay, perfect.
Not influenced, nothing. Not because that way the channeling is cleaner. And what the other person receives is cleaner too.
You dared to take the step of getting into this field, which is complicated, the field of searching for missing people. Because people have come to me too. But I always refer them elsewhere because it's not something I handle. I don't feel confident in that because I've never done it. So I haven't dared to take that step. How did you dare to take that step? It really catches my attention, honestly.
When on a Medium page and such, I saw the post about this girl from Paraguay. I don't know why, because there were a lot of cases posted there, and I started looking, and something just clicked for me. And I wrote to the person who was in charge of the page and everything, and she sends me the photo, she sends me my name, and I immediately made some drawings for her, like 4. And she replies to me and sends me photos of the exact same places that I had. And then I said, I have to do something here and help out. In the end, you end up helping out. And then I told her, try not to tell me too much so the information comes out naturally. And I started telling her a lot of things. And then when she would confirm what I was saying, she would tell me, and I would say, just tell me the story about what I sent you. Don't go off into something else. And that's how we did it.
Of course, because people need to understand that if you're experiencing something like this and suddenly you hear a lot of stories, what starts to happen is that it's hard to separate yourself from your own mind, which begins to create stories based on the information you're receiving. I mean, what they're telling you. So it's even harder for someone who is psychic, a medium, to have a lot of information, because it's very difficult to keep your head above water when there's that kind of information. You start to...
I'm actually very strict about that. Don't tell me anything, don't tell me anything, don't get ahead of yourself, because otherwise the connection gets contaminated. And since sometimes this field of mediums, the psychic world, is sometimes looked down upon by some people, that's not the idea. The idea is to uphold what we do. You know what I mean?
In cases of searching for missing people, how do you experience that as a human being, so to speak? Do they get to you? Do they affect you? Do you end up very tired? How do you experience it? Not as a psychic, but as a human being.
Well, obviously these are very emotional cases. But I've managed to develop the ability to separate myself from it. I mean, if I work on a very sad case, I always end up with this injection of energy, like in a positive way, because there are people who say, oh, but if you do that, you have to cleanse yourself or take a bath. I don't know. I don't need that. There are people who say, no, you have to say a prayer beforehand. I believe in God and I always entrust myself to God, but no, I don't need to do that in order to connect. And of course I separate the sadness, but it really brings me a lot of joy to be able to help. So I think that's what gives me so much energy. I end up normal. I don't feel tired. I don't get headaches like I've heard some people do. No, none of that happens to me.
Of course, and as long as you can help and you're able to help people, at least by giving them some guidance, and if that actually bears fruit, it's an invaluable contribution, isn't it?
Yes. So yes, it's really, like it fills your heart. Exactly.
Also, as I understand it, from what you've told me, everything related to the search for missing people, you do it from the heart, and you don't charge anything for that work. Let's say that.
Right.
I'm sure it takes a lot of time, dedication, concentration, and commitment. Let's say.
Yes. Sometimes I even tell them, okay, just take me there and bring me back. I don't know. If it's far away, that's all we need. Just transport me, because sometimes the place is farther away. But
because that's something we haven't talked about. When you take on these missing persons cases, do you often travel to the location?
Look, in a recent case I did go there. They took me there and brought me back. I usually don't do much in person. Sometimes people have asked me, I want to do it by video call. All right, let's do it by video call. But it's more comfortable for me to do it through social media, WhatsApp or Messenger, because I feel like it flows better that way. Since if the other person cries, obviously I feel bad. So the connection can kind of slow down more than if it were in person.
But there you're talking about mediumistic experiences. I was specifically referring to cases like searching for missing people.
To the searches. For example, with the search cases, I went to one of the places because it was nearby, and the emotional intensity I felt kind of blocked you a bit.
Right.
Because of course you're there with the mother who's really sad or the father who's really sad, and you understand the situation, obviously, and the place. It did happen to me that when I got to the place, I said, okay, I saw images right there, like superimposed over what I was looking at.
In the same physical space where you were.
In the same space, yes. So at that point, I kind of got an X-ray of what had happened, and later it was confirmed that that's exactly how it was.
Have you had cases where the people are really distressed and you quickly realize, no, this person is going to show up soon? No, I don't feel like there's anything wrong with her. Has it ever happened to you that you suddenly have this conviction? No, this isn't something serious. It's just something temporary?
Yes.
That's happened to you too?
Yes, that's happened to me too. People also ask me a lot about what will happen to sick people. So in those cases, I can also determine, like, no, look, this is what's going to happen to them. Or if they're hospitalized, a lot of times people close to me will send messages like, hey, my aunt is sick and I don't know what's going to happen. Things like that. And I can also start figuring out what's going to happen to them.
Has it ever happened to you that someone can't communicate and people ask you to see if you can somehow understand what they might want to say or express? Ito? Like, I'm thinking of someone in a coma, or someone who, for some reason, like health issues, can't express themselves.
They still communicate. Because with COVID, I had a lot of sessions like that. So there were a lot of people who were intubated, a lot of people who were put into an induced coma, and still, they communicate just the same. Look, it's not like they speak to you directly. It's more like they talk and it goes straight to your brain and you understand it, like telepathy.
That's exactly right. So, for example, someone with cerebral palsy could also communicate, or someone in a vegetative state could communicate as well.
I don't remember ever having a case like that in that health condition. But yes, I have had people who were intubated, who later either recovered or passed away. And yes, like in a coma, but not specifically cerebral palsy. Just the girl from the case of hydrocephalus that I mentioned to you earlier.
But if we think that we are connecting, in quotes, with the person's consciousness, regardless of whether they have cerebral palsy or are in a deep coma or a vegetative state, that soul exists, and that soul might be able to communicate with you, right?
Look, now that you mention it, I was just remembering a case of a boy who had cerebral palsy and passed away. He was the son of someone close to us, and he was in a wheelchair and was in a vegetative state, something like that, with that kind of deep paralysis. And of course, he passed away and left many messages, I'm remembering now, for his mother and his brother. And they were very, very beautiful things, very healing and restorative, especially for the mother.
How lovely.
And I must have that documented as well.
Great. Ximena, as we wrap up, how can people reach you? If someone wants to contact you, how can they do it?
Well, I'll leave you my phone number because WhatsApp is always a very good friend of mine for this, since it's quick. Because it's quick and I can activate it, or rather, I can work with it at any time. And if not, there's Facebook, which is under my name.
So, Ximena, thank you so much for sharing your experience as a psychic, as a kind of detective medium psychic, like
Exactly.
a psychic who searches for people.
Searching for people.
And a medium as well. Thank you very much for sharing your experience, and I hope to see you again in another episode of The Invisible. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Esteban, to you for the opportunity for this interview and for letting me share a little bit about who I am, well, from the other side of the coin. And it's great that you do these kinds of interviews and that we get to know each other in this little world.
What did you think? I'd like to know your opinion. Leave it for me in the comments. And before you go, I want to recommend this video to you. It's extraordinary. She is Coto de la Barria in Tequio, and she's a psychic artist who draws the spirits she perceives from the beyond. So don't miss it. See you in the next episode of Lo Invisible.